In this learning objective, we're just going to do the previous learning objective, but in reverse. All right, so we'll be given the graph, and they want to create the equation of the sinusoidal function. All right, so here's the example. So this is the way it's going to look on delta math when you have to do it. So you have your kind of original sine function that's in the dotted line, and you want to make it look like, or sorry, it's the solid line, and you want to make it look like the dotted line. All right, so what's the only difference between this original graph and the new one? All right, what I had to do is I had to slide this up, and I had to slide it up so that the midline is 3. All right, so I'm going to identify the midline is equal to 3. So that tells me this graph is cosine of x plus 3. Nothing else changes. The amplitude is still 1, and the period is still 0 to 2 pi. All right, so this one, all I have to do is add 3 for the midline. All right, what about this graph? Well, the first thing, again, the solid line is where you're starting out, in this case with sine, and we want to create the equation. So the first thing I notice is that the midline is -1, and the amplitude is 2. So that tells me that my equation is going to be amplitude goes at the front, so that's 2 sine of x, and the midline goes at the end, -1. All right, so that's the equation here. There's no b value because my period is still 2 pi. All right, now things are going to be all of them combined. So again, the first thing I'm going to do is identify my midline. My midline is going to be the average of the top and bottom. In this case, it is -1. My amplitude is the height of the wave. In this case, it's 3. And my period is how long it takes my graph to repeat, in this case from 0 to 12 pi. So my period is 12 pi. Yeah, so now I can go through and make my equation. Again, amplitude goes first. In this case, it's a cosine graph. They tell you that part. You don't need to know that part. Midline goes last. And the most common mistake would be to put 12 pi x inside the parentheses. But remember, it's not just the period that goes in. We have this formula that says the b value is 2 pi divided by the period. So in this case, it's 2 pi over 12 pi is 1/6. So 1/6 x goes in parentheses. All right, so it's just identifying all the parts and just putting it all together, knowing amplitude goes first, midline goes at the back, the period based on this equation goes in the parentheses. All right, so again, just go in order. I think the easiest thing to find first is the midline. In this case, it's -1. Next is the amplitude, because you have the midline. The amplitude is just the height of the wave. The amplitude is 2. And then the next is the period. Let's see, this one's a little hard to figure out. It starts at 0 and ends up there. That's not quite... Oh, sorry, I'm looking at the wrong one. I want to look at the dotted line. So it starts there at 3 pi over 2 and repeats at 15 pi over 2. So my period is going to be 15 pi over 2 minus 3 pi over 2, which is 12 pi over 2, which is 6 pi. So my period is 6 pi, but that's not the equation that goes in the formula, because the formula is 2 pi divided by that, which is 1/3. So my final answer is going to be amplitude sine bx, so 1/3 x, midline -1. But if you can identify each part, those 3 parts, just put them in the correct place in your formula. So here's one for you to try on your own. You have your original sine graph in solid, and you're going to find the equation of that dotted line. And the final answer you should get is 3 cosine of x plus 2. All right, the midline got moved up to 2, so that's where this is coming from. The waves are height 3, and the period is 2 pi. So when I do my little formula, I get that the value there is 1, but you don't have to write the 1. It's just x. All right, so for this learning objective, you're going to complete problems on delta math. All right, there's 4 levels of problems you complete. They'll slowly add in more parts. So at the beginning, it's just kind of amplitude, then it's just midline and amplitude, then start adding everything together. Which is 4 levels, so it slowly adds on more difficulty as you go.